Right. Good evening. My name is Catherine Walton Elliott. I'm a member of the Olympia Indivisible Endorsement Research Team. My teammate on this call is Rachel Jackson. And this evening we are joined by Rachelle Martin, who is running for the position of City of Tumwater Council Member Position 5. This interview is being recorded and will be available for public viewing on the Olympia Indivisible website. Thank you so much for joining us, Rachelle. I hope you will be able to share specific information during the interview, but I do want to also note that we have a very short period of time for covering a lot of ground. So anywhere you can keep things fairly concise, we'd be really grateful for that. To start off, would you mind just giving us a brief introduction of yourself, your campaign, what you would like to share to start off?
Sure. So, hi, my name is Rachelle Martin. I use she, her pronouns. And like you said, I'm running for Tumwater City Council, position 5. I'm doing that for a myriad of reasons. I've been involved in community service really directly for probably the last 15 years in various roles. And one of them that I hold right now is I'm the president of the Thurston Lewis Mason Central Labor Council, which represents all organized labor within those 3 counties. And being embedded within this really strong movement towards economic justice has been really inspiring. And so I wanted to see what it would look like to expand out. I'm just finishing up my Master's of Public Administration degree like next week and thinking about what's a suitable role for government to play and also nonprofits, advocacy aid organizations, and trying, you can't fix or work on everything in one space. And so what is it like to do that coalition building? And I was on the Social Justice and Equity Commission at the City of Olympia because I wanted to be involved when we were rewriting the police oversight guidelines, and it gave a really interesting look into municipal government that, yeah, I've really been thinking about it. So that's how I ended up in front of you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And congratulations on your degree that you're soon to get.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
wonderful. So I know you are not yet serving on the council or in a position with Tumwater, but I am curious, what are the top one or two priorities that you've been hearing from Tumwater constituents?
Housing is a huge issue. So that's definitely, I think, something that kind of cuts across everybody. It affects us all. And then also availability of public transportation is a big deal. Tumwater is really spread out. And if you don't have the privilege of having easy access to a car, then it can be very difficult. Another one is this is such an incredibly beautiful area, and so people are really protective. But my big issue that I would like to address is the brewery and how it's sitting crumbling, and it's such. I could talk and talk and talk about that, but that's like my number one thing is we need to do something about the brewery.
Fair enough. Now, I remember the brewery from when I was a child, and so I understand. um, so, as you're hearing these things from constituents, if you were to be on the council and you got voted in, how would you ensure that constituent voices are heard and incorporated into city decisions?
One of the biggest things, so right now I work for state government, I work for the Department of Health, and before that, I worked in public libraries and I did that for about 13 years. And with all the community service that I do, the one thing that is the most important is having a communication cycle where are you creating opportunities where people can ask questions and where are you also disseminating important information out? So it's not just one-sided, you have to come and find me and then I'll tell you things. It's we're going to create environments either digitally or in person where information can be disseminated and also where can we have those conversations. So that's really important to invite that active communication.
Thank you. Um, so, one of the groups that we're very aware of right now, their rights are under severe threat nationwide, are trans folks. Are there specific actions you would take as a city council member to protect transgender people and to promote belonging at the municipal level?
It's, I want to think so. And the pause comes with like with the Labor Council, we passed a trans protection resolution, right? This is something that's really important to us. I do, the AFL-CIO has a constituency group that directly advocates for LGBTQ workers called Pride at Work, and I've been on that board for several years now. And so this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. So the pause is we can have all of these good intentions, right? Like, yes, we can protect everybody, like, and we need to really be mindful that the trans population needs so much support. But what does that actually look like?
Mhm.
Within municipal government, you have to be so mindful of what is that scope. And so it's one of those like ideologically, absolutely, we need to find every possible way to protect this population and figuring out what would that relationship be with not where it's so prescriptive, like I'm going to tell you how I'm going to support you. It's what would support look like for you and how can we support you as a government agency? Or if that's not what we do, then how can we make sure that you're getting that support that you need from a different organization? And what does that, like I said, that coalition building look like? So in Tumwater specifically, there's a huge issue with kids not being able to play sports. And it's to everybody's detriment that this conversation is happening right now. And it's so loud and it's so conflict filled. And it's everything that you see is people getting pulled further and further away. And at its core, we're talking about kids playing sports. And so I don't see the argument because it's like the right answer is let kids play sports. So so let me condense that. The right thing to do is to figure out what is within a reasonable scope of a governmental agency, a municipal governmental agency, to perform those kinds of services, and then figuring out with the impacted community, what would you like above that? And then, trying to figure out where to go from there. But it's, like I said, it's all that, conversation and making sure is everybody at the table that needs to be here to get their say.
It's great. That comes back to that. How do you have constituents as part of the problem solving
That's right.
process?
Yeah, I'm real chatty. I like talking to people. I always have lots of ideas, but I'm very quick to say, I have an idea. What do you think about this? What are you thinking and how can we figure out a way that we can grow within this movement together? But yeah, I like talking to people.
Great. Well, as you've been talking to people, I know that public safety is also a big topic these days. Um, from hearing from other folks and then within yourself, how would you define public safety at this point in time?
What an interesting question. Because do I feel safe walking down the road when there's no sidewalks? Right? No, I don't really feel safe. In my immediate neighborhood, do I think I'm going to be the victim of violent crime? No, I don't. So it's interesting because I now work in public health. I work for the State Department of Health, and so safety is even, you know, do we have access to clean water? Are we is there irradiated dirt that we're around? And so public safety is just such an incredibly broad subject that I'm kind of like, the short answer is yes, I feel safe in Tumwater because I have a position of privilege, right? I'm white, I'm cisgender, I'm female, I'm economically privileged. So, yes, as an individual, I do. However, that is not universal. And I think going just by my experience or people that live in my neighborhood that look like me, that talk like me, that's such a small amount of people that live in Tumwater and people that live in our area. So again, it's that if I feel safe, well, then what does it look like for me to engage in conversations where I'm seeing and hearing, well, what does safety look like for you and how are we not meeting that? Do you not feel economically safe? Do you not feel safe because you're unsure of what law enforcement, what the culture is like around here? So it's in this way, I absolutely acknowledge my privilege that as an individual, yes, I do feel safe. And I feel like even statistically, Tumwater is a safe community. Um, Safety feels different for everybody, though. And so I don't want to be overly glib at the same time. Um, so, yeah, that's my short and long answer.
Okay. And so absolutely hearing that you have your perspective and that you need to hear from a variety of different people because public safety is different for different people.
I think
Um,
sorry, go ahead.
oh
Yes.
no, that's okay. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, there's so many things that, like, there are objective things in life, but safety is not one of those. I
Mm,
think it's so subjective based on what populations that you consider yourself a part of. So it is, that's such a subjective thing. That really makes me reflect on how incredibly lucky I am that I can say, yeah, I do feel safe in this community. So, yeah, thank you for the follow-up.
that's okay. So given that you're recognizing that some folks may not have that same experience that you're having, um, are there top priorities for you that if you were to join the council that you would pursue in terms of addressing some form of public safety? And that may be a wide range of things.
My big, so I'm very in like school mode, right? I'm writing my capstone, I'm doing all these things. And so one of the things that I'm addressing in my project is how can we feel safer as a community? Because when we are so distanced from each other, geographically, like, right, we're all siloed in our houses, or, so where are those spaces where we're joining together as a community and really feeling like we are connected within that kind of that model of social cohesion? So, and that's truly what builds public safety is if something happens, do you feel like somebody else is going to support you through that, right? If something happens, are you going to feel safe if the police show up or, fire or ambulances, or if something happens, is your neighbor going to help you? And so the things, and it sounds so kind of Pollyanna, but to enhance public safety, you have to create opportunities for people to connect with each other. Because if you know the people in your community, then that trust is going to get enhanced and you will feel safer. And it won't just be an illusion because everyone's like, we're all best friends. When we engage in community truly, then we understand that we're not so different. And the right thing to do is to step up for each other when something bad does happen. Yeah.
Are there ways you would, I guess, facilitate that as a council member, that creating connection and community?
So I love a robust Parks and Recreation department,
Yes.
right? There's so much good that can happen in I love Parks and Rec. And so, like, it's such a powerful opportunity to bring together community members. But also, I kind of joke about this, but I think the library can kind of solve all of our problems if we just kind of really lean into it. And so, this idea of the library is a community place where these are where people are joining. And so, there's programs that happen in those libraries, but it can also be, this is where we're just joining for a community meeting, but creating those opportunities of I mean, even as a council member, like, hey, I will be at the library from this hour to this hour, come and have a chat with me, or, we're going to do book club or whatever. But yeah, those would be the things would be how you facilitate people joining together. Or the other thing that I'm really into is what is it like to make accessing city council meetings or county commissioner meetings, how to make that really accessible so people feel connected to those decision-making bodies, and then they know this is how you can make a comment, this is how you can be involved. And, that is really important is just to create as transparent of a format for communication as possible when you're engaged in those systems.
Thank you. Thanks for expanding on that. Um, so I'm going to shift focus here just a little bit, though we're still going to be talking about kind of equity in that area. There was a recent directive of the Thurston Regional Planning Council to leave the draft regional transportation plan intact without revising language concerning equity and climate change related to federal administration executive orders. That's a mouthful. Are you aware of that? And do you have thoughts on that conversation that's happened recently?
So I have not read I haven't read it cover to cover. I'm not going to front like I have.
No.
What I do know is I work a lot with ATU 1765, which are our intercity transit drivers,
Mm.
and realizing how important the work that transit does and how impactful it can be in so many different ways has created a deep passion that, this is the right way is to fund public transportation as much as possible because it impacts economic, environmental justice issues, that community gathering, all of those things. So it is very tempting when so my job is federally funded and it goes through the CDC and it's such an intense time when you see things happening at the federal level and then how it's coming down to smaller agencies. And what I really lean on is you have to be mindful that the culture has shifted, but our ideals and our mission as a community haven't. And so how can we stay safe as a community within when we have this, larger set of eyes that are coming down on us, but realizing we also do need to have those core services. And if we're not being mindful of environmental justice issues, then I mean, all of these conversations we're going to have are so much shorter than if we were being more mindful of it. So it's like my big things like we need to have high density housing, and that needs to be linked with public transportation and all of these things. Like, there's no reason to not have that included in any plan because I feel that it would be very reasonable if anyone was on the other side of that, that would be a conversation worth having, that it shouldn't be avoided. That's the other thing is I'm a state certified mediator, and so I work with conflict all the time, and I it sounds kind of odd, but I really enjoy it because often when you're in conflict, it's the only time where people are really honest with each other, or organizations are, I'm going to let it kind of all be on the table. And so I don't avoid a difficult conversation because when we avoid those conversations, then those communication silos become deeper. The culture, I mean, you just get more and more spread apart. And so this, again, very kind of idealistic, like, this is a hard conversation, but we should have it. And we should feel comfortable as a community saying this is the right thing to do. Um, yeah, that's what I've got.
Okay, that's fair. Um, so you also, in your questionnaire, you mentioned avoiding domination of the rental market, I believe, when we were talking about housing.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
what kind of strategy do you think could help Tumwater avoid that, or could help Tumwater to rein in corporate landlords so that locally owned businesses can operate? Can you talk a little bit more about that piece?
Yes. Private equity has, I mean, you can just see every industry that it becomes involved in, it really destroys it from the inside. And so, this idea that the rental market is so dominated by these giant, like my landlord is a corporate landlord, it is the largest organization in the country. And to know that they are absolutely bleeding me dry and that I am just a number to them is really difficult. And so, yes, I pay my rent every month. It hurts more than if I was paying that to somebody that this was their second or their third house, or, this is something that it's, so practical things that can be done is to limit the amount of the housing market that could be released to, these giant corporations. Like, can there be a cap on that? Can there be a tiered structure of property taxes that happens whether you have one house, two houses, three houses, or are you a company that owns 100 houses?
Mhm.
So having scalable property taxes and also caps on how much could be owned per organization would be a good place to start.
Sounds like a good place to start. Um, so you have an opponent, Megan Sullivan, I believe. How would you characterize the differences between you and her?
Um, Having such a rich history in labor organizing, is something that really sets me apart. That it's economic justice is so multifaceted, and it's something that I've been involved in for a really long time. And it's I am not from here. She has, my understanding is that her and her family have been here for an extremely long time, and she's been embedded in this community. That's different, right? I've lived in Tumwater twice in my life. This is my second time. I've lived here for 3 years for this round, and then see, I lived in Little Rock for 4 years before that, so for a total of 7 years. But that's different than somebody that's been here their entire life. And so I think that at its core, that's probably what the biggest difference is between her and I is she has ties to this community that I will never have because my granddad didn't come from here. And so, I mean, that's just the reality. But in terms of ideologically, I'm again, it's that like I want to lean into the difficult conversation. I want to take on the really hard things, and I don't know her well enough to know if that's how she operates in the world. I am coming from a place that I haven't met many other people that lean into those different difficult conversations as thoroughly as I do. Um, so that I think is something that sets me apart from most people. Um, yeah, I think that that would probably be the biggest difference is that she's from around here and that I focus my time on um, economic justice. And I have, like, I don't know anything about her family, but I'm a single mom with two daughters, and it's that's given me such a different frame of how to interact with the world. Is what is it like to go into a community and not have any support and try to make your life here? It's that's something that really sets me apart. And I think specifically from her is that I haven't had the incredible amount of privilege that she's had.
Um, so actually, since you've mentioned conflict and difficult conversations several times, how do you handle, or how would you plan to handle in a council setting situations where there are differing opinions or conflicts within the city council or community? Because those do come up and they can be challenging.
Yeah. So one of the most important things, and one of the things that I really love about mediation is you have a shared agreement of these are the things we are going to talk about. And then you have somebody that moderates that conversation, right? We said we were going to talk about issue A, and all of a sudden we're over here talking about issue B. Like, nope, we're going to save that for another day. We need to come back and we need to address these things. So that's a very practical way of just, we need to focus the conversation. There also needs to be some kind of shared understanding is, are we hoping that we're going to have some kind of outcome out of this, or are we having a discussion? Those are two fundamentally like different paths that you can take when you're in a group because sometimes you do just need to kind of talk it out, and as long as that's what everybody knows is happening, then I think that that's actually a really beautiful space to be in with each other. One thing that I do quite a bit is I acknowledge what's happening, and it's easy when you're in conflict, just it builds and it builds and it builds. And one of the things I'm really good at is, all right, this is what I'm feeling, or this is what I'm seeing is happening right now. Do we need to take a break? How's everybody like? What is it going to be like if we can all kind of catch our breath so we can have this really good conversation? Or are people interested? Do you want to have a fight? Do you want, like, does this feel good? Do people want to raise their voices? Well, that's out of order. That's not what we do in this space, and we need to be really mindful of that. So I'm a rule person through and through. I love a code of conduct. I love a shared agreement. And then you hold people to that. So yeah, hey, when we said when we were in the space together, we weren't going to raise our voices. That's what's happening. That means we have to end the meeting. When we reconvene, we're going to have a different, this meeting is going to go in a different way because once you violate this rule that we've all agreed is so important, then you don't go back from that. We need to take a break and then revisit this the next time. So it's conflict work is different based on every group, but that would be specifically for this one, it would be relying on the rules. Um, that would be probably the biggest thing. Yeah.
Um, I'm connected, but we
Mhm.
are asking all our folks this. Do you have any self-imposed guidelines on the sources of your campaign revenue?
Yes. So I don't have, I'm good at a lot of things. I'm not a good fundraiser. I'm not, this isn't my thing. But the one, like, I just have nervousness. So like, that's my own rule. But what I'm being really mindful of is I don't want to be affiliated with a party. I've had multiple endorsement requests and, hey, can you come and talk to us? And like, that's not the conversation that I would like to be a part of is are you aligned with this group or this group? So that is, I think probably the hardest line that I've taken is I don't want to take any money or endorsements for either party.
Okay. Thank you for answering that. Appreciate it. Um, we're getting pretty close to time. I do want to touch on just a couple more pieces and then make sure we leave a minute or so for you to touch on anything that we haven't covered. There's so much. Um, I was quite interested in your questionnaire response. You mentioned the importance of breaking down silos between partner jurisdictions, and Tumwater has a lot of partner jurisdictions.
Yes.
Um, Could you expand on that a little bit in terms of what specific strategies would you use to do that?
That doing labor work and working for the state government is such a great window into how big this machine is, right? It's so like governance is massive, and realizing that there are like all of these parts are really necessary. But when they're not connected and people aren't aware of how all of those connections are made, then people end up doing work that's inappropriate for their jurisdiction, or they make a decision, they're like, that's actually supposed to happen at the county level. And so the big thing for me was watching meetings and okay, well, what is the role of a county commission? How is that different than a city council? And then trying to figure out what is it like to work within the state government, and tribal governance is a whole thing on top of that. And so it's I've never seen it, for me at least, it's never gone badly when I say I would like to have a conversation about what's going on. I'm really curious. Can you tell me about your job or your organization? Can I learn more about it? Because the more I can talk to people and understand how that machine works, then I can help other people understand, like, hey, you have this issue. You're going to want to talk to this organization. This would be really appropriate. So, and it's one of the, like, I love a flow chart, right? I have a problem. If it's a problem like this, I'm going to go here. If it's like this, I'm going to go here. And then you tell people, hey, I have this really great flow chart. You have a problem? I'm going to tell you where you're going to go, because it's easy for big organizations, well, really any organization, you just get so laser focused on this is what I'm working on. And but when you figure out, well, I'm working on this, but this other person's working on this, and there's a board that does this, and then there's, an NGO or a nonprofit that does this. So what is it like for us to be really transparent with the plan, but also the tasks that are going to go along with that? And then what is it like to share that as appropriately as possible?
I like the flowchart idea.
Oh, I love a flowchart. Give me an infographic. Yeah, no, big time.
Flowcharts are great. So we have just a couple minutes left, and then we're going to have to wrap up. Is there anything that we have not? I'm sure there are many things we have not covered, but is there anything that kind of jumps out to you that you would like to make sure we touch on before we wrap up?
Oh gosh. I think the biggest thing is because I talked about that, I don't really have a support system. Like my family's not from here, right? And so that's something like I have worked with families. When I was at the library, I was a paraprofessional children's librarian for like 9 years, but I was at public libraries for 13. And I was a 4-H instructor and I did all of that. And so that's been something that's been really difficult when I moved here was, well, where are people and families to hang out with? Because I got so used to that in all of my
Mm,
life where it was the community was so open. But living in a rural area or somewhere that you're from, community is everywhere
mm,
because it's just so embedded. And Tumwater is different because it's so suburban and it's so, and then it's also rural, but not in the way where we have the community center that we're all going to go to. So that's something that's really important, is to try to create that community, because, not everybody is from here, but everybody needs each other. And so what is it like to build that community and create that support system for people that are newer to the community? That's really important. People need to feel like they belong.
makes sense. Well, thank you so much,
Yeah,
Rochelle, for joining us this evening. Really appreciate you taking the time and for us to talk through. So I'm going to end the recording now, but
awesome.
thank you so much.
Thank you. This was great.